A debate that's been flying around on the internet recently has come to my attention. Both sides claim that you aren't born either an atheist or a theist, depending on which side rages the argument. This is, in my opinion, ridiculous and can't be proven either way, no matter what argument you throw at it. But that doesn't stop people from throwing all manner of arguments about it at the wall to see what sticks. Some of which don't really line up with anything related to ideas that back up atheism or rationality in general. So I'm going to go through this, break down the arguments, and explain if they work or not, and then give my own perspective on the matter. This is a stupid one, but in courts of law, people need to argue stupid people who don't understand the position they're talking, which can in fact be rather dangerous. And since it's in the first bit of the new year, it's always best to start afresh. With all that said, we shall begin. Granted, as a theist myself, I shall be knocking down an atheist on this, but I started arguing with an atheist about this when a theist made this position, basically saying that you're not born an atheist. First of all, we need to ask ourselves, what is an atheist? Because that is basically where people start to fall down. According to most dictionaries, atheism is the disbelief in a god or gods. However, this term is blasphemous, and so is not easy to cast in stone. Many would say it is a rejection of a belief in a god, or a rejection of theism, the belief in gods or God. Add that to the fact that atheism doesn't have a category which can comfortably contain it, be it a philosophy, a worldview, a belief, a religion, or even a mindset. And it's a real struggle to set out what the noun can be classed as. This allows license to anyone who wishes to pin it down in whatever way suits their argument best, putting them in a similar position to the definition of faith. Not the best argument, not the best comparison either, but it's nearer than you might think. Granted, I'm going to be doing just the same with my statement, so I'm not giving myself solid footing, but if we go etymologically, it is a negative to theism, the Greek a being a negating prefix, much like the non in non-binary. Many atheists on these posts would claim that atheism is the default state, since you can't believe in something without being exposed to it. Thus, you're not exposed to theism, you're an atheist. By that logic alone, it makes sense, but it falls down in two major ways. Firstly, it assumes the non-existence of God, which they still argue about. And second, it doesn't account for the personal experiences of the baby, but that has two reasons of its own. Firstly, babies are incapable of communicating beyond their basic needs through crying and facial expressions, which aren't conducive to understanding anything abstract, and some atheists wouldn't even call communication at all. And that's why they should never be allowed near animals. I have several videos explaining why, and I'm pretty sure you need to watch them. I'll leave it in the link if I can. Second, by the time babies are able to coherently express views, experiences, and opinions, they won't be able to share such from when they were born due to a phenomenon called infant amnesia. This is something that Neil deGrasse Tyson explains on multiple occasions. Even if they could remember those things, they are already seeing the world through the lens of their culture, so would likely attribute it to things they have been taught by their village, Village in this case meaning the people around them, and that could be things like fairies, gods, just weird things, or even monsters. This unfortunately makes the post arguing from ignorance, which is a well-known fallacy and one that too many people fall into. One atheist I debated with tried to push the point and fell into more than a few bad positions. These are going to be the ones I look at here. A baby can't articulate their view on God because they have no concept of a God, thus making them an atheist. That sets a very bad precedent for all atheists if your position starts with a lack of a concept. It sounds like ignorance is the beginning of atheism in that sense. But even when you break it down to more specific things, the more general things, it starts from going more. My daughter doesn't eat meat at this stage. Does that make her a vegetarian? Likewise, my father couldn't eat anything towards the end of his life. Because that included a lack of meat in his diet, did that make him a vegetarian in his later days? If someone doesn't understand the concept of being gay or transgender, does that mean they are automatically straight or cis? In short, the lack of something isn't a negative of it. You either believe the claim of an atheist or you don't. That's a binary that falls down when you hear one of the most famous arguments for atheism, courtesy of people like Ricky Gervais and Christopher Hitchens. We're all atheists to one religion or another. If we are either atheist or not, then that debunks the argument there, since it follows that you need only to be theist towards one God to not be atheist. However, if you do follow Hitchens, then it becomes a normative scale with atheism as a ground state, not as a default, and can't possibly be binary. True atheists disagreeing on a worldview isn't as damning as theists in the same position. But if two of them are arguments that directly contradict each other, then the idea they're supporting doesn't stand up well.
He also attempts to make the argument that because it's a logical argument, it doesn't require evidence. Unfortunately, we can go with Hitchens' razor here, which says what can be asserted without evidence can also be dismissed without evidence. Thus, his attempt at using special pleading is just that and doesn't get anywhere.
No baby has ever accepted the premise of God. This is on the lines of, if they don't say yes, it's no. A very good attitude to have in a bar. A bad attitude in the case of anything life-threatening. Again, reasons to keep atheists away from animals. A baby may well believe in God because they see stuff that we personally can't understand. But just because it can't say doesn't mean it didn't happen. That, unfortunately, is the behind closed doors problem, which is a poor position to hold no matter who you are talking about. If it happened behind closed doors and no one else sees it and no one else is talking about it, it doesn't necessarily mean it didn't happen. Binary view is poor for many reasons, but his refusal to look at it in terms of a third lane is worrying. I clearly offered him one, but it's just as easy for him to accept. So I'll explain my position on it. I know the term agnostic doesn't directly relate to religion, and is in fact linked to knowledge. However, the original Greek term gnostikos also means able to divine, which when applied to religion refers to the level of certainty one has in the existence of God or gods. The fact that multiple people have seen the same amount of evidence and information about God, have discussed it in open forums, and can check and verify all the relevant information and still disagree on the topic shows that knowledge doesn't guarantee which side of the line you end up on. And many will debate whether knowledge of something will increase your likelihood of being on one side or the other. It's just the way it goes. Using this understanding, I tend to draw a chart of who is theist and who is atheist. Thus, we have this. Here we have a standard XY coordinate graph to demonstrate the point that I often use. On the x-axis, we have the theistic views going on both positive, theist, from agnostic theist through deist, theist through any faith, and up to evangelist, and negative, atheist from agnostic atheist through non-believer, denouncer, and up to anti-theist, showing how strong they hold to their particular side. I'll be very clear here, this is the spectrum I genuinely use, but the graph is only for demonstration purposes. I do not genuinely sort of look at people and say, yeah, you fall in one of those categories. As realistically, people can be anywhere on the line, and ultimately, it's how they present themselves that matters, not what their beliefs might be on the other side of the computer. On the y-axis is the Gnosticism, how certain they are in their conviction. I think we agree anti-theists and evangelists are the most certain on their positions, since they are the most outspoken in either court. Likewise, those who use agnostic as a prefix to their position are not as certain in theirs. Even allowing for the odd zealot deist or outspoken non-believer, we can quickly see is going to form an inverted bell curve or bimodal distribution. So where would a baby sit in that chart? We're going to assume no divine revelations or whispered voices in the womb, and so they would be slap bang in the middle. They have no certainty about where their experiences are, and so can't say either way. They are, if you will, true agnostics, similar to the true neutral in D&D alignments. Maybe people might like this, but I'm pretty sure this is the best place to put a baby, if you had to put it, on the graph of theist to deist, or theist to atheist. They will be right in the middle, with no specific views either way. This is, I'll be honest, a fascinating thought experience, with memes, little videos, and even a point of exposition in a Capaldi-era Doctor Who episode, making use of it. But it's ultimately an argument from ignorance. And to say that it helps either side is just special pleading. The fact that one of the main sources for this video is on this argument being bad comes from a site run by an atheist is a strong indicator that isn't the killer argument that some forum users claim, and is in fact shouted down by those who understand how fallacious it is. The non-binary argument is flawed and just suggests a similar attitude to non-binary people in communities, which, considering many atheists are staunch supporters of the LGBTQ+, doesn't show them in a good light. Neither does saying that someone who is without knowledge is by default an atheist, no matter how you try to spin that on the positive. This further proves that rationality is not the hallmark of atheism, and if you tried to put a scale on it, you would see it is evenly distributed across the theist and atheist spectrum. I have a very strong feeling that it would actually be an actual bell curve, a proper bell curve, showing that those who are more rational also happen to be more agnostic, and thus having less alignment either way. As the father to a baby with very mysterious moments, I do wish I could find out what she was thinking, to figure out her whims and so forth. But my first question wouldn't be if she believes in God or not. But why is she crying in the middle of the night after we changed her nappy, fed her from both the bottle and the breast, and played with her all day long? And I'm certain many parents would back me up on this. I can tell you, though, that her gazes into random corners was amusing. But potentially another reason why we moved. Babies can teach us a lot about ourselves, how we manage life in general, what our priorities should be, and maybe how God views us in the light of our sins and our troubles and how we respond to things. But their beliefs in the divine is not a position one can take any stand on, since a large part of how they perceive the world is down to us. So remember that, dear friends. Stay humble, stay safe, and God be with you in this new year.